Paul, really appreciate you joining us here at Second City Toronto. As you can see, we're sitting in the John Candy Box Theatre. You had a very special relationship with the institution. Tell me about it.
Well, this stage underneath me is part of the building where John Candy started at Second City, and it started his career, and he almost didn't do it because he wasn't really going to audition for Second City, but Dan Aykroyd and Valerie Bromfield were auditioning, and they were friends of his, and they said, come with us to the auditions. You can just sit in the back, and we'll have lunch afterwards. And then they called his name, and he's like, you guys. And so that's what started it. He got in because he just did an improv. He'd never tried it before, and turns out he was a natural.
You mentioned the floors. These are the floors that he has performed on. When you first came in here, first thing that you did was you knocked on the floor.
Yeah, I knocked on the floor. It's like this little part of the stage underneath us is where so many of the greats of comedy, frankly, not just Canadian comedy, we've exported these people like Dan Aykroyd, like Gilda Radner, like my own brother Mike, you know, elephant in the room, John Candy, Eugene Levy, Dave Thomas, and they all got their start here, you know, on this piece of stage.
Johnny Toronto.
Yeah.
That is the nickname that many know John Candy as. How did that story come about?
So when Candy first starts dominating the Toronto Second City, you know, he was one of many, but he was definitely a big personality. He lived large, like he would outspend his own bank account, you know, but he wanted to have the right thing. So if they needed a limo for something, he would just rent a limo, and they'd say, Johnny, where are you going to get the money? And, you know, he was like, don't worry about it. And they started nicknaming it. It might have been Joe Flaherty. They started calling him Johnny Toronto, like he owns the town.
Right.
And it's a much longer story, and it's in the book, so I don't want to. But
in some ways, did he own Toronto?
Well, by the time he'd owned the Toronto Argonauts, I think it was Dan Aykroyd turned to somebody in the crowd and said, "Look at him. The crowd loves him." And he brought the Grey Cup to his hometown. And they said he is Johnny Toronto. He made it. He became Johnny Toronto.
So John Candy achieved global stardom. We can name a bunch: SCTV, Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. For a younger generation, it would be Home Alone. But he still remained deeply rooted to Canada. He was part owner of the Toronto Argonauts alongside Wayne Gretzky when they won the Grey Cup in 1991. Can you talk to us about the pride he had for Canada?
You know, he, like so many of the people we export, he bought a house in Mandeville Canyon in Los Angeles, but also a farm in Queensville. And so he had this ranch, and he wanted to make sure that his family knew the Canadian life, and he spent a lot of time coming back and working with Canadian actors. Only film he directed was a film called Hostage for a Day, and he populated the cast with people like Robin Duke from Second City, and some of the people who were in the main stage cast at the time, like John Hempel, Don Lake, Catherine Greenwood, and he really wanted to bring people with him.
Therapist said we should be a little less mocking in our relationship.
Oh, is that what the therapist said? Well, I'm trying. It's just that there's so much in our marriage that calls for it.
He worked really hard in Canada. The last film that got released after his death was Canadian Bacon,
right,
which is like about our complex relationship that seemed to have cleared up. We don't have that complex relationship anymore with the United States. But, you know, I think he really felt the two allegiances in a sense, because California had been good to him and America had been good to him.
Right.
But you don't, I live in California. I can tell you, you are Canadian the whole time, you know, and no matter where you are, you're Canadian first. And I feel like I identified with that when I was reading about him.
You write in the book, he lived large, he loved larger, and the world loved him back in return. It's beautiful. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, you know, it's elaborating on something Andrea Martin said in her own memoir. She talked about how he was a volcano of joy. He wanted to make happiness for everywhere he went. So he also wanted to be happy. So part of his happiness came from connecting with people. He was on the phone for hours every night. He wanted to have after-show parties. Now, a lot of that meant that he was eating and drinking late at night, which didn't help his health condition. But it was all based on that wanting to be connected with people all the time. And I think he got into comedy because it was a way of, it's weird because I say control, it's not a bad kind of control, but you want to do something to affect the room or the person in that room. And comedy on a grand scale affects many people, but it also is a one-on-one thing. It's just a way of finding joy. And joy is one of those things that it's contagious. Once you give joy, other people are joyful. They spend, and you don't have to think that, by the way. That's an intellectualized version of it.
Right.
I think with an animal like John Candy, it was instinctive.
You share a lovely anecdote in the book where your brother, actor, comedian Mike Myers, met John Candy at the University of Toronto on campus. Tell me how that very short interaction kind of influenced a comedian to make it. Yeah.
Okay, similar to the way Spider-Man was bit by a radioactive spider, this is Mike's origin story. So my kid brother is goes to this comedy show. He's a little kid. He's kind of funny. In fact, he was funny. We didn't even know how funny. He was funny on the schoolyard, and he wouldn't even show us. And he goes and he says to John Candy, he's a young teen. He's 16 or 17. And he says, "Mr. Candy, sir, how do I get into comedy?" And any other celebrity would have given him possibly terrible advice or no advice. And Candy said, "There's a theater downtown called Second City that I came from. They have workshops. If you go to the workshops, you can find out if you're any good, or if you're interested. And if you're not interested, you'll drop out and you'll come up with something else. Maybe you'll be an actor, maybe you'll be a musician, or whatever you want to do." He goes, "And if you're good at it and you work hard, you'll get better at it. And you still might not get discovered, but you'll be happy doing it because you love doing it. And if you love doing it, you'll keep doing it and you'll get better. And maybe somewhere down the line you'll do something. But just find out first if you're any good and if you love it, because you have to love it." That is the most amazing advice.
That's awesome.
It's like he met, on the mountaintop, the guru said. And so then, here's how that affects me in a weird way. So this is my most recent book. My book before it was The Kids in the Hall, One Dumb Guy. The Kids in the Hall were in the same classes that I went to because my brother went to. I met the kids in the hall at Second City workshops because Mike had gotten us all to Second City workshops. So when the Kids in the Hall started taking off, we all knew each other. I wrote their book, and then I wrote the John Candy book. So not only did it start Mike's phenomenal career, but my career, in a weird way, has also, I am now the guy chronicling all those things.
This year would have marked his 75th birthday. John Candy passed away at 43, untimely. What makes him such a revered figure in Canadian pop culture, even to this day?
I think, for one thing, when he was cut short of what he could have done, he would have gone into dramatic acting, possibly directing, and maybe more comedies. Maybe he might have also been in something like Schitt's Creek with his fellow SCTV people. But the absence of John persists. People who knew him and knew his work felt like they still haven't resolved that loss. At the same time, what he represents in his work, values that I think are hugely needed today: joy, empathy, vulnerability. He represented the so-called common man with noble dignity, right? Dan Aykroyd, by the way, in the book describes him in these kinds of terms all the time. And those values in a film like Cool Runnings, which takes place at the Calgary Olympics.
When you cross that finish line, where did these guys come from? Jamaica! You'll know.
He talks a lot about values that I think we should all aspire to. And there's a lot of cruelty in public policy in places and in people's social media. When you see a character who lived for empathy and joy, and his face is like a beacon of that, these twinkling eyes of his. Yeah. So it's like, if you didn't invent this character, if he didn't exist, we'd have to make up a fictional character like this. His face is a flag for joy,
For fans who have followed him throughout his career, and new fans who might be opening this book and discovering, what a mogul he was really for Canadians here, what do you hope they take away from his career?
He really tried to do films that made people laugh, but he was also good to people. He was good when no one was looking is a phrase that comes up a lot. I hear that in a lot of other people have said that. And I think there was something about you could be a big success and still stay scaled one-on-one with people. And I mean, that's definitely the lesson. And also, I guess, for all Canadians on a very specific level, representation matters. I say that with a little bit of facetiousness because, yeah, another white guy, but the representation of the goodness and the values of Canadians that we aspire to, even if it's only aspirational, we want to be better, and we have an icon here. So that's a good reason to celebrate him.
I want to change gears a little bit.
Okay.
Take a little bigger picture. Comedy seems to be having a moment right now, from the cancellation of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert to the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, about his comments about Charlie Kirk, to comedians performing at the Riyadh Comedy Festival in Saudi Arabia. Knowing what you know about John Candy, what would he have made about all of this that is happening right now?
Oh, I have to preface anything by saying there's no way I presume to speak for John Candy at this point. I don't even, in the book I talk about some of his struggles, and I never even analyze or judge those. Like, however he lived his life, I can't walk a mile in his shoes.
Right.
And I can tell you that if somebody is getting a hurt as a result of his comedy, he wouldn't do it. Based on anecdotal, what I've seen, I don't think he would ever do cruel comedy or punch down. I think Jimmy Kimmel would like him. I think he would like Jimmy Kimmel. Like, those people who are, Seth Meyers, all those comedians who are out there being positive and just being enlightened. I can't speak for him, but evidence-based, he would have done something positive.
You can't speak for him, but you can speak for yourself. So I'm going to ask
Okay.
you, as a Canadian living in the States, how do you make a sense of what is happening?
It's tough. And are they going to show this when I enter the country again? No, and that answer says it all. I would say this. I recently wrote an essay called The Canadiafornian, and in it I formulated this view I have now. I love my space in Northern California that I live in with my wife. We're both Canadians, but we both got U.S. passports because we wanted to engage in civic politics there. It was during the Obama years, so don't get mad at me anyway. So we booked tickets on the SS Poseidon before it flipped. And so I will tell you that I always feel Canadian everywhere I go. So I am a Canadiafornian because I also feel a little bit, when I see the Republic of California flag, I feel a little bit of pride. And whenever I see the governor pushing back against the president, I feel, our state is holding out, a little bit. So if that changes, I'll let you know.
Okay.
But I definitely feel Canadian. I feel super proud. I was just at a writers' festival in Calgary, and I was on panels talking about the Canadian condition, which is something we never tire of talking about, and perhaps never should. I want Canada to be all the cool things I like about Canada, and it is home. So, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here in Toronto. Right? I say that when I'm anywhere.
Paul, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate
It's really
Thank
fun
you.
talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.